Why, hello, it is Litsa. It is quite late at night. Actually, it's quite early in the morning. It is exactly 1 a.m. on October 6th, 2022. Why am I up so late? Because I really want to get this episode up on the YouTubes because it's so dang worthy. So Rip, Roar, and Ride, I learned all about it this morning after talking to Todd and Buddy, who are both absolutely delightful people, really sweet. I was like, dang, I'm not positive enough after talking to them. But Rip, Roar, and Ride is a charity ride. They're raising money for diabetes. The ride is in the Liberty Hill area. There are courses that are anywhere from 30 miles to 80 miles. So if you just enjoy riding and charity riding, I think this is a great one to check out. The registration is $49 a ticket, which is not that bad for a charity ride, actually. And if you want to do it, the URL for the bike reg is bikereg.com/55417. Bike reg is BIKEREG, like bike registration, but for short. Anyway, so there's 3 reasons I think that you'd totally dig this episode. 1, I personally learned so much about diabetes, and it's just really interesting subject matter, so there's that. 2, if you're a competitive cyclist, man, diabetics, they have everybody beat when it comes to being tuned into their bodies because they kind of have to. But as a diabetic cyclist, wow, there's like these machines that monitor your blood sugar every 5 minutes, I think. And you know when you're gonna bonk. Like, you have so much data about your energy levels and all that stuff that like we have heart rate monitors and power meters and stuff like that, but they are actually reading their blood every 5 minutes. So that's pretty cool. We talked about that a bit, and that was very interesting. And then for folks that aren't competitive cyclists at all, in fact, you're maybe new to riding, I highly recommend listening to this episode about how charity rides go, because in my personal opinion, charity rides are probably the best way to get into longer rides. If you've only ever ridden like 5-10 miles and you're intimidated by 30 miles, well, charity ride is the way to go because they're so well supported. They have tents with refreshments every 10 miles or so, and they're highly social, and they try to make them fun, and so it's pretty much the best experience, and everyone who organizes charity rides want to set their riders up for success, and they know that a lot of the people on the ride are people that only ride for the charity ride. So it definitely caters to people that are kind of nervous about doing longer rides. So listen for all those reasons and maybe more. Oh my God, maybe many more. I'm really struggling here, you guys. All right. Oh, also, sorry, this is the longest intro ever, but Todd is a mountain biker, and his daughter lives in Arkansas, I think in Fayetteville, which is so cool. And it just so happens that Kat is in Fayetteville right now, mountain biking away. So we, of course, talked about mountain biking a little too. All right, enjoy this one.
The Rip, Roar, and Ride.
Yep, Rip, Roar, and Ride.
What is that?
It's a cycling event, a charity cycling event in Liberty Hill. It ranges from 30 to 80 miles. It's been going on for quite a long time, but 100% of the proceeds go towards the Lions Club and JDRF, Juvenile Diabetes Research Fund. The Lions Club have been, like I said, had alluded to, has been running it for a long time, 10 plus years, but a couple of years back they stopped doing it because, you know, quite frankly, they were just getting a little old.
Yeah.
And so Buddy and I were close to the president of the Lions Club, and we basically said, let's partner on this and see if we can keep it going.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
And so we took over as organizers.
Are y'all Lions Club members?
No, we're basically representing the JDRF side of the equation.
Okay.
And so we said, let's split the proceeds, but let's keep it going because it's a good ride, good cause, and let's see if we can make it bigger. We had that little complication of COVID, but we started our first collaborative ride with the Lions Club in 2019.
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah, that's when we took it over. And I think we had about
274.
274 riders that first year.
Oh, that's great.
Because they've been dormant for a few years. There's obviously an opportunity for investment in the Liberty Hill community, right? There's a lot of really cool local businesses and you know, it's beautiful country up there. So like just traditional cyclists, I think, enjoy it. But from a cause perspective, you know, and even the Liberty Hill dollars tend to go towards type 1 or diabetes support.
Right.
So they contribute a lot. They have a Lions Club camp for type 1 kids, that sort of thing, right? So we're very aligned on our outcome, which is to try to help those living with type 1 diabetes, you know, have a better life.
So, for people that don't know, what's the difference between type 1 and other diabetes?
Well, I mean, so first of all, it's all diabetes, but you know, which means that you have complications where your body's not making insulin either at all, like type 1, or not enough, like type 2. But type 1 is unique in the sense that it's more of a genetic disease versus, you know, a lot of other factors play into type 2. But genetically, your body basically kills off your pancreas, your ability to produce insulin. So when you're type 1, like I'm type 1, so is my daughter, so is his daughter.
Wow.
And so
Let's turn right.
when you're type 1, you literally make no insulin, which means that you're having to do something, right? So you do shots, you do insulin pumps, you do something. And statistically, you know, type 2 is about 92% of all the diabetics in the world.
Oh, wow.
And type 1 is about 8%.
Holy
And
cow.
type 2 is where you tend to see, you know, they're living with a lot of similar complications, but it's usually environmental. Like, you know, you have, you know, people that are pregnant sometimes develop type 2. Sometimes it's lifestyle, you know, like food related or that sort of thing. But type 2, generally you have some insulin production that's just sub-optimized. And so you either have to kind of work your way out of it or get help or medicine or something. But type 1, there is no insulin. So if you don't have insulin, you basically don't live.
So you said that it's your body just basically destroys its own pancreas. So does that mean that type 1 diabetes shows up over time? Like, does it take a while for your pancreas to finally be destroyed?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I mean, it's not like it's an overnight thing. And because it's a genetic predisposition, you know, there needs to be some sort of trigger that activates that genetic code. And it's in the autoimmune disease category. So, like, there's lots of other things that basically attack your own body, you know what I mean? Think about thyroid type stuff or you know, whatever. But yeah, so something that you know, they don't know exactly, but the theory is there's a trigger, you know, like a cold or, you know, stressful event or something like that, that activates that predisposition towards type 1. And so, yeah, like my daughter, and I think his daughter was similar, you know, she was 4 when she was diagnosed.
Oh, wow.
So there was like a couple months where she was just not acting normal, like she was going to the bathroom a lot, you know, really thirsty, and some of these like classic signs. She was 4, so you can imagine, you know, there's so much variance and activity in a little kid, right?
Right.
But she was still, we could tell she was off, you know, just parents. She wasn't, like, we went to Disney, and I think she kind of like was feeling terrible,
Yeah.
But because she's at Disney, she rallied.
Oh, I see. So she just pushed herself.
Yeah.
Poor little thing. So did you suspect right away since you're diabetic, or did it still take a while to realize?
Well, that's kind of part of the interesting part of the story is that I was diagnosed after her.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was 39 when I was diagnosed.
Wow. Was it her diabetes that made you get tested, or just complete coincidence?
It's coincidence probably more than anything, but of course I was, I already had a mentor and coach if you think about it, so, kind of knew the signs.
We'll turn right at the stop.
I was having some complications with my eyesight and stuff like that were abnormal. And so that goes back to the point, there's usually some sort of trigger. But think about the reason why we raise money, Ripple and Ride, GDRF and all this stuff, is that, it doesn't mean that all type 2s can kind of work their way out of the complications they have, but most have a path, right? It's curable.
Yeah.
Type 1, there is no cure.
So does that mean most of the money is going to research?
That's 100% right, yeah. So there's two types. There's a lot of research, but there's basically falls into two categories. You have one category which is like, let's find a cure. And if you think about it, that's kind of the long game.
Yeah.
Right, that's me with a 4 or 5-year-old daughter trying to see if sometime before she turns 60, there's a cure where, she doesn't have to live with it, but it'll probably take that long.
Right.
So the other part is how do you better optimize people as they're living with it?
We'll cross here, but we'll use that path on the right.
Yeah. Because it's like, it's every day, all day, 24/7. There's no break. There's no relief.
Yeah, so I got involved in the JDRF ride team back in actually 2014, but really got started because my daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes the day after Thanksgiving in 2013. And for me, we were in the hospital. She was in ICU for about a week because you go through a lot of people that are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes go through what's called DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. And so they have
a sudden thing, or was she acting strange before
well, she had gone through the girl stuff because she was 13 and 14. And so she just started that. She was real active in sports, but she had lost a bunch of weight, and that's one of the signs, is losing a bunch of weight. And she was real thirsty all the time. And
where does that come from? Because both of y'all mentioned a lot of thirst.
Yeah.
Your body becomes acidic. Your blood does. And why you lose weight is you start to lose weight because the acidity in your blood is eating away at the fat and muscle and organs. So it's a very dangerous state.
Yeah, one of the complications with type 1 is that you kind of have fat ends and both ends, right? I mean, like if you go untreated, you go really high DKA, have this massive saturation of sugar or something else in your bloodstream that causes like a massive amount of issues, right?
Yeah.
Or if you give yourself insulin too much, it could take you too low, which would potentially cause you to go into a coma or some other things. So you really have to ride the line 24/7 and trying to stay in the middle.
So that's why people are testing all the time?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Is they're basically trying to figure out, they got a range that they want to stay in. Most people need to stay in. And so you're basically spending, a good portion of your brain power trying to ride the line between this relatively narrow range of either going high and having, DKA or hospital visits, or going low and dying, basically. So it's,
But for me, it was, of course, so we were going through that 5 or 6 days in the hospital, and then they started to, once she got better and all, it's the first thing they had to do is to teach herself how to give herself injections.
Oh gosh,
And,
I just imagine being 13 is already hard. You already feel weird, and now she's going through the most traumatic experience of her life. That's got to be so hard.
Well,
so hard as a parent too.
Oh, it's super hard. I still get emotional about it. So.
Oh gosh.
Probably always will too. But yeah, it's they have to grow up really fast because they have to be really responsible. And you know, when she probably she's still taking shots. Some people will use a pump. Todd uses a pump. His daughter uses a pump. It's a little bit easier, but you know, being a 13, 14-year-old girl, she didn't want to have a device on her, and she was just getting into bikinis and stuff like that for the summer, you know.
Yeah.
And she's actually now 22, and she does wear a constant glucose monitor, which checks your blood every 5 minutes in the ranges that Todd was talking about.
Wow.
While she was learning to take injections and check her blood and stuff, I think kind of the big pivotal moment for me to get involved in JDRF and try to figure out what to do is there was actually a JDRF volunteer that came out and they gave you what's called a bag of hope, and they actually still do that. One of the things in there is this Rufus bear, and you can actually practice on the Rufus bear giving him injections.
Oh.
And but in there was a bunch of literature and stuff, and it was all the different, you know, programs and the community of JDRF. I saw this biking deal in there. I thought, oh, I can do that. Of course, I didn't tell my wife. I didn't tell my daughter that I was going to go start doing these 100-mile bike rides. And so that's kind of how me and Todd got connected.
Wow.
I called him in January and said, hey, how do I join the ride team?
So
Of course, you get Todd, he started trying to sell me. I always like to joke, I was like, I'm already sold, I'm already sold, you'll have to sell me. He's a sales guy by trade.
I imagine that you've made a lot of friends through this because everyone has that common connection, like everyone understands diabetes.
Right. Yeah.
So I talked about joining the ride team, and you know, JDRF hosts national rides, and so JDRF National hosts seven, Todd? Six or seven rides, and there are places like Amelia Island, Florida, Death Valley, California, Tucson, Arizona. Todd just got back from New York rides. Yeah.
Wow.
So a lot of cool places. There's a big fundraising component, but it's usually pretty easy to hit it. But you get a package and you get a hotel and 3-day vacation and a little 100-mile bike ride thrown in the middle of it. Little century ride. But Todd and I were doing them pretty regular. When I turned 50, he was cool enough to tag along, and we did 2 that year. We did Greenville, South Carolina, and then we went down and did Amelia Island, but in between we did 300 miles, so we did 500 miles that week.
Oh my goodness.
But then COVID struck. Kind of slowed things down. But we, all those destinations and stuff, we always wanted a national ride team to bring one to Texas. That's when me and Todd had started talking about trying to host a ride here of that magnitude, a destination. We started looking around, and that's when we had seen the Ripborn. We'd actually done the Ripborn ride, and a couple of times, and thought it was pretty cool. But then we realized that they'd stopped doing it. We made contact with Greg Arnett in 2019.
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah, it was October of 2019. Well, we connected with him earlier than that, early in the year, and we brought the ride back. Had a lot of momentum, and like we were talking about earlier, we had 274 riders. And part of it is,
we were already, I started the cycling team for JDRF back like 2005 or 6 or something like that. And it's been really successful, don't get me wrong, right? I mean, like you said, we've done all these great destination rides. We've raised over $1 million in fundraising just from those activities, just for this local team. But the thing that we didn't really have is we always wanted to build a bigger community. You know what I mean? And you want to do that little. And so that's when we connected with the Alliance folks, because they were opted out of continuing the ride when we basically resurrected it. And it gives us an opportunity to still participate in these national JDRF activities we still do, but really do something local for local people, local type 1s, local families. And I think that's really kind of the important part, that least I've realized over the last however many years this game has been type 1 is that after a while you still deal with the complications and the challenges with testing and all that stuff, but the reality is having community is probably the number one thing that a type 1 or type 2 kind of needs to help support, you know what I mean?
It's a very unique experience in the world, so you don't want to feel alone.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's
so
go
one of the
down
other,
to the-
it's not related to ride specifically, but I also have a meetup group that is for type 1s. In the meetup group, I think I became the organizer back in like, I don't know, 06 or somewhere around there, but over the years, I mean, it's gained like 700 type 1s in Austin,
Wow.
right? And the most and I have a little form for them to fill, like basically, why are you joining? And you got to appreciate that because it's adults that, you know, these are people that have been living with type 1 for 20, 30 years, right? And I asked them, why are you joining? And the most common answer is they literally know nobody else that's type 1.
Wow.
Nobody else after 30 years of type 1. And so that's kind of where some of the ideas with the ride team came from. Is like, we can build a fitness community, right?
Yeah.
It's a good way to get people out. I mean, exercise. The hormone that we take is called insulin. That's the thing the pancreas is no longer making, right? But one of the natural ways to convert sugar into energy is exercise. And so for me, for example, I've done like a few, besides these rides, I've done a few like Ironmans and stuff. For me, like if I need, 30 units in a day of insulin, if I'm doing an all-day event, I may only need like 2 or 3.
That is fascinating.
So if you think about the benefits of the community, fundraising, research, frankly to our daughters,
Yeah.
and then also to help people get active, it's a nice synergy here in Austin.
That's really amazing. Well, I think probably all the racers listening to this, their ears would perk up, because the whole thing about doing cardio training is you're training your body you're reprogramming how your body taps different energy centers.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, you are experiencing that much more firsthand. Like, for you have like measurable data to show how that works.
I was going to say for the racers, like type 1s actually have a hack, right? So the CGM, the continuous glucose monitor, is basically monitoring how much energy you have stored in your body at all times. Like every 5 minutes, it's taking a reading. It's a little sensor that's stuck in you, right? So if you think about it, like I'm in one of my races, and you want to be racing. You want to be somewhere between like maybe 110 to 120. That just to give you kind of a relative range. If you get down to like 70, you start feeling really bad. Your energy's really low. That kind of thing, right?
Honking.
So if I see that I'm at like 130, but I'm going trending down, I can start eating now.
Wow.
And I can get ahead of the bonk that's going to inevitably come.
Wow.
Now for me, it's obviously dangerous, but for somebody that's competitive, it would be like a little secret weapon to always stay on top of their energy.
Wow.
Right?
That's crazy. So like bonking explained by a type 1 diabetic.
There you go, yeah.
That's amazing.
The thing I found interesting about like the CGM and not being type 1 and watching my daughter was, and you talk about riding and racing and triathlons or whatever kind of competitive stuff. The difference in all carbohydrates we know are not the same, but they're not even the same for different people. Like Todd could eat pizza and my daughter Paige could eat pizza, and their blood sugars would spike differently just because how their bodies overall handle it.
Right.
I mean, it's similar, but it's different per person. It's really crazy. I always tell my daughter, "Let me borrow your CGM. I want to try."
I know that like you're talking about how people's bodies are all process energy differently. Do you have any insight, since y'all both have daughters? Not that a sample size of one is very useful, but do you know anything about that energy usage and hormones from like a male-female perspective?
Yes. Yeah, trust me, yeah. Yeah, well, because we both have gone through, adolescence through going to college. So, let's just say there's some hormone changes in there with our daughters.
Right.
Yeah, emotional, stress.
Yeah, everything kind of affects.
My daughter went through Rush, obviously her first year, and it's the first time that since she's been diagnosed that she had some really extreme problems.
Okay.
And actually had to go to the hospital.
Was it related to stress?
Yeah, it was probably she wasn't eating quite right. And when she hears this, she'll be mad at me. But it was a lot of stress, not getting much sleep, all the fun things of rushing for a sorority. Todd's daughter just went through it. Was she 4 years younger, Paige?
Well, she's a freshman, so.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, but that was very stressful and emotional, and it's quite a roller coaster, but none of us deal very well with stress, so. But you can really see it magnifies itself in a type 1 diabetic.
But the interesting thing, like the energy is like, besides the dangerous side of the equation, but like I can, after 12 years of being type 1, I can tell the difference in how it affects me on, like if I take coffee with like a little sweetener, I can tell by sweetener how it's going to affect me.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so like, for example, I know the difference between certain types of oatmeal for pre-ride, stuff and how it's going to affect my short and long acting, energy.
Like, what are some of the patterns you both observed, and are those common patterns or are they just Todd patterns?
Well, there's a little bit of both, right? I mean, like, I could talk to 100 type 1s and I can give them some general range advice of like how certain foods affect them, just because everybody's going to be affected by, like candy or, pizza or whatever. I mean, there's going to be some variances, like Buddy was alluding to. It could be stress or hormones or other things, but in general, this is the, the carbs that you have to, plan for. But, the thing that I like about the technology now, again, this is why we do this, is that over the $1 million+ that we've raised, and hopefully be many millions more, a lot of it actually funded this high-tech stuff that's allowing us to live with more information and automation and things like that.
You ever see demo?
I do. But like even my daughter,
place you can show.
My daughter has a pump that is married with a CGM, and so this was technology that was funded by JDRF over the last 20 years. But anyways, basically they talk to each other. So when the pump sees that something negative is happening, they'll make adjustments on the fly to allow her to have kind of a semi-autonomous support structure.
I think the other kind of cool thing about it too is the ride that we I'd like to say we kind of partner, but we complement each other, because you got Texas Mama Jamma ride, and of course they had their ride a few weeks ago, and then we have ours, and then of course there's the Live Strong ride. I know a lot of people have done that. We kind of like to call them the fall classics, and trying to keep the fall classics going. You've gotten over hopefully the heat.
Well, how supported is it?
We'll have 4 fully stocked rest stops. It's kind of neat. The Lions Club members really, one of the rest stops will have a bunch of baked goods, which we've kind of been a little slow on that because of COVID. We wanted to have things wrapped up, but years prior, the ladies of the Lions Club used to bake all kinds of cookies and all kinds of fun stuff, cakes and everything for a rest stop too. And then they'll be supported with SAG as well. And of course, corner marshals and route marshals. Overall to help out.
So if somebody isn't really much of a cyclist, like they're thinking of even just buying a bike for this maybe, what could they do if they're intimidated, or what would you tell them?
Well, they definitely could do we have a 29-mile ride, but you don't even have to do that, so that's our shortest, course overall. The thing about it, there are a lot of beginners, they're kind of first-time riders that join up, and it's just usually a good group of folks that do the 29 mile.
Well, there's a rest stop about every 7-ish miles, all the way through the whole route. So when you move back, obviously you have the same one.
Yeah.
We have 4 SAG vehicles. We have corner workers. We got start finish. We have, paramedics on motorcycles through the whole ride. So I think it's pretty well supported. I mean, the other thing too is, quite frankly, when we talk about this as organizers, it's like, frankly, it's still pretty inexpensive. $50 for a fully supported 80-mile ride. I mean, that all goes to charity. I mean, that's still, there's nothing really else that's even remotely close to that from a ride around the Fall Classics, as they say.
Yeah, they
like
on
the MS-150 or the Livestrong ride. I mean, those are big rides. Same thing with our JDR National rides. Those are big fundraising events. But $50 to go out and have a good time in the country. Come on, let's go do it.
Yeah, it's really a great, beginner ride. We were talking about, there's 2 rest stops. Because the 29, the shortest route we have is basically an out and back, and you're going to hit 2 rest stops, going and coming back. Same rest stops.
What are rides that you guys like to do just generally, weekends, or do you do group rides or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, historically for me, I like, used to do a lot of Nolan County. Don't do them quite as much since I moved to Georgetown, so I always like doing in the middle of the road, was always fun. Every once in a while we're doing the 62-miler.
Yeah.
As well too. Really enjoy that one just because it's kind of spirited, but it's also kind of cool going around town. And then of course, bicycle workshop, which is the same track, ride with them quite a bit out of downtown with the water sports.
What ride did they have going out of there? Do you remember? Was it that there was that all business ride?
Yeah.
What about you, Todd?
Well, I mean, for the last, honestly, during COVID and stuff, we've been mostly mountain biking.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But, for the ride team, because, I've done a lot of the coaching we get a lot of new members every year for that national team. We spend a lot of time actually on Grovall Park and Walnut Creek.
Yeah.
It's kind of a safe environment.
Right.
You get a solid 20 with no traffic. But outside of that, it's a lot of the normal stuff. We'll go to St. Marcus, we'll do loops out on 620 or 360 or up north on Farmer.
What's your favorite mountain bike trail? Or trails, top 3?
In Austin?
In the area. It could be Rocky Hill. That would be okay. That's an acceptable answer.
Well, we literally spent a fair amount of time at Walnut, obviously, because the trails have been so developed over the last few years. But
the Southern Walnut, like those little trails.
Up there in Farmer.
Okay, the Walnut Metropolitan Park.
But, I really like Greenbelt, the old classics, right? You go to the far west side, you got all those nice climbs.
Ooh, can you climb all the way up and down the Hill of Life?
I'm a little older than you, so there was one point in my life where I could.
Well, I've never could, and I'm my age.
That's an event by itself.
Oh my goodness. Hill of exhaustion, more like.
There is some cool side trails off that, like going down, but it's not like you were talking about Bentonville and stuff where do something like that, there's pies.
Yeah.
There's that epic feature route that you can go do afterwards, right?
Well, we are taking ourselves to Hyde Park now.
Yeah, where are we going?
I think if we took the sidewalk, we could go back into that neighborhood. Otherwise, we will be in Hyde Park and then we cross back on Mayer or something. Or we could just take the sidewalk back where we came.
Okay. Whatever you want to do.
Okay, is there anything else that you wanted me to capture before I press stop?
I mean, kind of cover the day. You were kind of the live stuff at first. I was trying to figure out how to fill in a few, and then you just kind of summarize.
I think you got a good amount of content for the ride.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't call out the website, but we can send you that. I don't know if that helps. Or...
I can put that in my outro. Okay, you guys, if you want to do
the
this.
bike reg.
The bike reg, and the Instagram stuff.
Yeah, there's I'll make sure you have my email. I think you do because of the calendar.
I have your email.
Yeah, so if you email me all the show notes that you want me to say, then I can do that.
How can we support you?
Yeah.
That's how you're doing.
Tell people my coffee shop is the coolest coffee shop
All right.
in Austin.
I grabbed a great cup of coffee in there when I got there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'll probably, I think this little guy turned himself off. So we can just ride back. And of course, if you want to talk more, that's fine. But I'll probably mostly like be getting shots of y'all just riding, because there are parts where my camera definitely did that. So I need footage to like the fact that my camera's pointing at the street. So that was super interesting though.
I was going to say, you probably have a tremendous amount of interesting cycling content that you've curated over the last however long you've been doing this.
I haven't been doing this very long. I think y'all are episode 13, or maybe 14. But I mean, it's so cool talking to you, because I honestly knew very little about diabetes at all. It's completely mysterious to me. I guess we can turn left here and go back. So I think it will be enlightening. I think, perhaps people that have family that have diabetes, or they have family that do, it's all obvious, but someone like me, it's just like, oh, I had no idea.
Well, remember what I said, like the most common comment is that they don't know anybody else, which also means they don't really talk about it.
Yes,
And it's funny, actually, what I've found over the years is that you talk about it, and all of a sudden people are like, oh yeah, my aunt, my, brother-in-law, whatever.
I would imagine, we have to talk about it, because then you have more empathy for the aunt or the brother-in-law. It's very easy to dismiss Aunt so-and-so as, oh, she's diabetic, she's just old, whatever,
Too much sugar. That's what we hate. Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of misperceptions and all that kind of stuff, which is fine, and like that's going to happen that way. But yeah, but a lot of people are just very, and I get it, right? I mean, I live with type 1, and I work at a big technology company and all that stuff, travel a lot, and sometimes even I have to. Obviously, I'm comfortable talking about it. You know what I mean? But if I'm going into like a 1 or 2 day planning session with,
turning right here.
With some other people, I bring it up, and all of a sudden it becomes like the topic for the next 2 days. You know what I mean?
Oh, because people are fascinated, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm better for a reason to get something done. You know what I mean?
Like I see, but you're the first diabetic they met that is willing to educate them.
Yeah.
And then hopefully after meeting you, they just get on YouTube and finish educating themselves.
Exactly.
And donate.
Do a lot of talks and other things related to it, but but most type 1s are not that way. Most type 1s are very, very private.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's that whole, stigma, especially people that, some people that grew up in a certain age, even their doctors were dismissive of activities and stuff like that. Like with my daughter, same with his, we're like, you gotta be smart, and you're gonna have an extra job that nobody else has, life sucks, and stay with it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we say you can do anything you want. If you want to go run a marathon, you can run a marathon. If you want to go become a doctor, become a doctor. Like my daughter and I go scuba diving.
Wow.
Which seems, probably not the smartest thing. The point is, a lot of the type 1s out there, they've been told, or they just feel like they've got this thing, and, it's a negative thing.
I would think that there would be a stigma around type 2 people, and I wonder how they feel. Okay, if I were type 2, then I'm basically saying, well, I wasn't born with this. So then somehow, are you going to think that this was my fault? And as a type...
Well, that's kind of my point, right? It's a lot of type 2, because that's the majority, a lot of really good people with unintended consequences of why they got type 2.
Right.
But most people, including TV shows and all that stuff, a lot of times will be like, oh, that's the person that doesn't know how to like portion control and you know, all that kind of negative stuff about like lifestyle choices. Don't get me wrong, some of it's absolutely true. People will lifestyle their way into type 2, but that also becomes the stigma.
Right.
And for type 1, which is more of a, you know, it's a genetic issue, a lot of type 1s are just like, I don't want to be the educator for the world.
Gotcha.
But again, they miss out on the community.
Right.
Because I can't tell you how many times, just in the last 6-8 weeks, since my daughter moved to Arkansas,
Oh, cool.
we've been on with like, you know, moms that have dads that have type 1s in school, finding ways to make sure that if something goes wrong, we can have somebody on tech wake them up, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that community that is going to make you feel safe, supported, sort of thing.
Okay, so your daughter lives in Arkansas. Does she live in Northwest Arkansas?
Yeah, Fayetteville.
Oh, Fayetteville. So she's right by. Does she mountain bike?
No.
Oh, what the hell? Oh.
Well,
We can't give either one of our daughters to ride.
actually, I'll say not yet.
Okay, that's better.
Always optimistic.
She just hasn't realized that she's living in like a golden land of opportunity. Trail opportunity.
Absolutely.
So I'm guessing you were there to visit her and you were there for Grant?
No, I wasn't there for Grant at all.
Oh, okay.
Last weekend was Dad's weekend for the sorority. And the
Oh,
Alabama-Arkansas football game.
oh, that's funny. Okay.
So my wife and I drove up there the week before because I just worked out of a Airbnb for the week. And did quite a bit of riding.
Yeah, what was your favorite trail?
Well, you know, I've done now. I was going up there before my daughter
You
even
can
got
just go straight.
interested in
Barback.
School, right? Me and buddies would go up there and just go mountain biking, right? But so I've done a lot of Bentonville, which is of course, you know, epic. But the two areas that I worked on this time were Bella Vista.
Mm-hmm.
That was really fun because
That's where the back 40 is?
Yeah. Well, that's where I was riding with the guys where they were like, "Oh, I live off of, you know, the Sugar Trail or whatever."
That's
you know?
so cool.
I don't know if you've heard of the Atalanta trails, Lake Atalanta right by Rogers. So I was staying in Rogers, which I found as I just rode from my house over there to the side up. A lot of the trails in Atalanta were like up on the ridge and stuff, were kind of like Bella Vista.
We'll turn right on 14th.
But they have an amazing bike park right near Rogers.
I'll have to
It's
tell
like slope
Chad.
style, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And so I rode that bike park because it was only a mile from the Airbnb, literally every day for at least 30 minutes.
Wow. So Bella Vista, back 40, that's like real swoopy, lots of elevation change and some switchbacks, I remember.
Yeah, a lot of like ledges, lots of rock. Kind of like
I
Austin
don't remember
in some
that
ways.
part. Oh, okay, maybe
Well,
I've blocked
you
that
gotta
from
go,
my
next time you
memory.
go, you gotta go to Rolling Springs.
Okay.
Rolling Springs is amazing. Really, really big features too, like ledges, rock features.
What about, so the place by the Airbnb that you were describing, I already forgot the name.
That
The place by the Airbnb that you were describing, how does that compare
compared to what?
to the back 40?
Oh, well, I'll let you go by.
Oh, sorry, we're going a little too
So, you were asking the Airbnb?
Oh, that trail that's near the Airbnb that I already
Oh
forgot
yeah,
the name
the Atalanta Trail
Atalanta.
up in like the hills or mountains, but similar to the back 40.
of. Okay.
Less features, more single track kind of stuff, right?
Well, that sounds like what
But
I like.
but the bike park is like literally right next to downtown.
So is it a bike park with like a lift?
No, it's
Okay.
not that much elevation, but it's all like paved
Okay.
routes.
Wow. All
So
right.
you just pedal up to this kind of elevated spot, and then there's like 3 runs going off of it, 3 different directions, like ski style, green,
Yeah.
blue. Each one of them, actually 4 routes. Each one of them has, little jumps and tabletops and all that kind of stuff.
Neat.
So when I went there, I'm not so good at all the features like some of my buddies. Maybe it's that getting older, who knows. But anyways, but I want to do them. Drops and that kind of stuff, right?
So after our ride around Cherrywood and Mueller and all that, we came back to the shop where we had originally met and just kind of stood on the sidewalk forever and chit-chatted about more stuff, about mountain biking, about small business. I got on my soapbox a little because I can't help myself. It was just really great. Todd and Buddy are super nice people. I hope that the Rip Roarin' Ride does absolutely fantastically this year. And even if you're listening to this kind of late, it's an annual thing, so you can do it next time around. All right, well, be safe out there.